I learned early that in our family there were two kinds of children. There was Maya, younger by 4 years, louder by 1,000 decibels, and golden in the way that certain people are golden. Effortlessly, undeservedly, and at someone else's expense. And then there was me, Nadia. The one who handled things quietly. I paid for my own college. Took out loans, worked weekends at a campus library, graduated with a finance degree and a discipline that would have impressed a monk. While Maya dropped out of her second university in 3 years, I was building a career at a mid-sized asset management firm, then moving to a boutique investment house, then, slowly, methodically, building my own portfolio on the side. By 31, I had $340,000 invested across a diversified mix of index funds, individual equities, and 2 REITs I'd researched obsessively for 8 months before touching. It wasn't inherited. It wasn't lucky. It was 7 years of brown bag lunches, no vacations, and saying no to things that felt good now but cost too much later. My parents knew I invested. They didn't know how much. I'd learned a long time ago that specific numbers in our family had a way of becoming targets. My grandfather passed in late October. Grandpa Yusuf was the kind of man who built things, literal things, a small construction business, a paid-off house, a family that gathered without being summoned. His death wasn't sudden, but it still left a crater. The memorial lunch was held at my Aunt Dina's house 3 weeks after the funeral. 35 people I counted once. Aunts, uncles, cousins, neighbors who'd known Grandpa for decades. Long tables pushed together in the dining room and spilling onto the enclosed porch. The smell of cardamom rice and roasted lamb. Someone had framed a photo of Grandpa near the door, smiling at something off camera. I sat near the middle of the main table between my cousin Farid and his wife. Maya sat across from me next to my mother. My father was at the head of the far table, already holding court about something. The meal was warm and sad and full of the particular grace that comes when a family gathers around loss rather than celebration. For the first hour it was genuinely fine. Then my mother stood up. She didn't clink a glass or ask for attention. She just rose and started speaking because she had always assumed a room would organize itself around her voice. And in our family it usually did. "I want to share something," she said, looking around the table with the expression she wore when she wanted to appear generous. "As many of you know, Grandpa always believed family takes care of family. And I'm proud to say that Nadia has decided to honor that in a real way." She smiled at me, a warm, public, completely fabricated smile. "She's agreed to transfer her investment portfolio to Maya so Maya can finally get a proper start." The room made the sound a room makes when people aren't sure whether to react yet. A few murmurs. My Aunt Dina tilted her head. Farid's wife touched my arm without meaning to. I sat very still. I had agreed to nothing. Not in conversation, not in implication, not in any universe adjacent to this one. There had been a dinner 2 months ago where my mother had floated the idea. Floated being generous since she'd stated it as though it were already decided, and I had said clearly that I wouldn't be doing that. She had changed the subject. I had believed that was the end of it. I understood now that she had simply been regrouping. "Mom," I said, keeping my voice level. "I didn't agree to that." The warmth left her face immediately. "Nadia, this isn't the time. You just told 35 people I agreed to something I never agreed to. This is exactly the time." My father's chair scraped back. He stood up from the far table, and I want to be precise here because the physical details matter. He stood up, walked 4 steps to where he could see me clearly, and pounded his fist on the table hard enough to rattle the glasses. "You are making a scene at your grandfather's memorial," he said, loud enough for every person in both rooms to hear. "Your grandfather who gave everything for this family. And you are sitting here being selfish." The word landed the way it was meant to. I felt it in my sternum. 35 people were looking at me. Maya was looking at her plate, which told me everything I needed to know about what she'd known and when. I took a breath. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out my laptop. Let me explain something about Marcus Webb. Marcus had been my financial advisor for 4 years. He was meticulous, direct, and had the particular quality I valued most in people. He said exactly what was true without cushioning it for comfort. I had called him the night before, not because I knew what was coming, but because something had felt off for weeks, a low hum of wrongness I'd learned to trust. I told him about the dinner 2 months ago. About my mother's habit of presenting decisions as already made. About Maya's escalating money problems. The failed boutique, the unpaid credit lines, the quiet loans from my parents that were never called loans. Marcus had listened and then said, "Do you want me on standby tomorrow?" I had said yes. At 12:47 p.m., sitting at my grandfather's memorial table while my father's words still hung in the air, I opened my laptop and typed 3 characters into our chat thread. He responded in under a minute. "Calling now. Accept the video." I accepted it and turned the screen so it faced outward. Marcus appeared on the screen, his office behind him, his reading glasses already on, a file open in front of him. He looked into the camera with the calm of someone who has delivered difficult information to difficult rooms before. "Good afternoon," he said. "I understand there's some confusion about Nadia's investment portfolio." The table had gone the specific quiet of people who don't know what they're watching yet. My mother said, "Who is this?" "My name is Marcus Webb. I'm a licensed financial advisor and I've managed Nadia's portfolio for the past 4 years." He adjusted his glasses. "I've been asked to clarify a few things, since apparently some commitments are being attributed to my client that she did not make." "This is a family matter," my father said, his voice lower now. "With respect," Marcus said, "it became a financial and legal matter the moment a specific asset was promised to a third party without the owner's knowledge or consent." He looked down at the file. Nadia's portfolio. Current value as of Friday's close, $347,200. Comprised of index positions for individual equity holdings, and 2 REIT positions she's built over approximately 7 years. He looked up. This portfolio was established, funded and managed entirely by Nadia. There is no co-ownership. There is no beneficiary designation naming anyone in this room. There is no document, not one, authorizing a transfer to anyone. My Aunt Dina said softly, "Oh my." My mother had sat back down. I noticed this without looking directly at her. "Furthermore," Marcus continued, "I want to be transparent about something Nadia has not made a point of advertising." He glanced at me briefly, a question. I nodded. Over the past 5 years, Nadia has made $67,000 in direct financial transfers to members of her immediate family. I have records of all of it. Amounts, dates, recipients. This is money she gave while simultaneously building the portfolio being discussed today. He closed the file. She has been supporting this family quietly for years, while being characterized as selfish for declining to give away everything that remains. The silence that followed was not like the silence after my father pounded the table. That silence had been tense, electric, waiting for someone to back down. This silence was different. It was the silence of a room recalibrating. Of people doing quiet arithmetic. Of certain relatives looking at my parents with expressions that were not warm. My cousin Farid exhaled slowly next to me. His wife had stopped touching her food. Maya was still looking at her plate. Her jaw was tight. I watched her for a moment and felt, not triumph exactly. Something more tired than that. My mother found her voice first. "You had no right to share our family's private." "Mom." My voice came out steadier than I expected. "You just announced my private finances to 35 people. You don't get to call it private now." She opened her mouth. Closed it. My father was still standing. But the table-pounding energy had gone out of him. He looked, for the first time I could remember, like he didn't know what to do next. I had spent so much of my life afraid of that look. Of the version where he was certain and loud and aimed at me. I hadn't considered what I'd feel when it disappeared. It wasn't satisfying. It was just strange. Marcus spoke once more. "Nadia, I'll follow up with everything in writing this week. Let me know if you need anything else." He nodded once at the screen. "I'm sorry for the loss of your grandfather." Then the call ended. I closed the laptop. The lunch continued because life has that quality. It continues. People began reaching for food again. Conversations restarted in quieter corners. My Aunt Dina touched my shoulder as she passed and didn't say anything, which was exactly right. My parents didn't speak to me for the rest of the meal. My father moved back to his seat at the far table. My mother ate in careful, composed silence, the way she did when she was saving something for later. Maya left early. She hugged my mother at the door and walked past me without stopping. I watched her go and thought about the boutique, the credit lines, the way she had looked at her plate when my mother made the announcement. There was a version of this story where Maya was a villain, but I didn't think that was quite right. I thought she was a person who had been told her whole life that things would be arranged for her, and had believed it and built a life on that belief, and was now standing on ground that had always been less solid than she'd been promised. That wasn't my fault. But it wasn't entirely hers either. The fault lived further up the table. 3 things happened in the weeks that followed. My father called once, a week after the memorial lunch. He didn't apologize. He said he felt things had gotten out of hand, and that he hoped I understood the pressure they were under with Maya's situation. I told him I understood their pressure perfectly, and that I also understood my own position clearly now. He didn't call again after that. My mother sent a text asking if we could talk through things calmly. I replied that I was open to that, when she was ready to begin with an acknowledgement of what she'd said at the lunch. She hasn't replied yet. It's been 6 weeks. And Marcus sent me the documentation he'd mentioned. A clean, dated summary of every transfer, every amount, every year. I saved it in 2 places. Not because I planned to use it, but because I spent years operating on the assumption that my family saw what I did and simply chose not to acknowledge it. The document is proof that the seeing and the choosing were 2 separate things. And I needed to know that wasn't just a story I told myself. I think about Grandpa Yusuf sometimes when I'm being honest. I think about the way he used to find me in a room full of people. Not loudly, not with announcement, just a hand on my shoulder and a look that said I see you. He was not an effusive man. He showed up in smaller ways than that. But he showed up consistently, which I've come to believe is worth more than any grand gesture. The portfolio my parents tried to give away? I started it the year he told me at a family dinner long ago that the most important thing a person could own was something they'd built themselves. He said, "Don't let anyone tell you what to do with what you built." I don't think he knew when he said it that he was talking about them. But I think he might have.